She did not scream when the last explosion tore through the canyon. Screams were for those who still believed someone might come. She only watched the dust rise, thick and choking, and felt the ground shudder as if the earth itself had decided she no longer belonged on it. By the time the smoke cleared, the Apache warrior woman lay twisted among broken stone and blood-soaked sand. Her legs were gone. Not wounded. Not broken. Gone. Torn away in a violence so complete it left no room for disbelief, only a hollow silence inside her chest where pain had not yet found its voice. She waited for death. It did not come. Instead, voices came. Here people. The tribe moved carefully through the wreckage, stepping around bodies, some still breathing, others already claimed by the flies gathering in black clouds. She recognized their boots, their shadows, their murmured prayers to spirits that suddenly felt distant and cruel. They stood over her. She searched their faces for shock, for grief, for rage. She found none of it, only fear. An elder knelt, touched the ground, then pulled his hand back as if the blood itself might curse him. Another turned away. Someone whispered that the spirits had spoken. Someone else said she was already dead, just too stubborn to fall quiet. The word crippled passed between them like a knife. She tried to speak, to remind them who she was. The woman who had ridden faster than any man. The warrior who had taken 3 scalps in one night and come back singing. But her mouth filled with dust and blood, and the sound that escaped her throat was weak, broken, nothing like the voice they remembered. The chief looked at her last. His eyes lingered longer than the others. For a moment, she thought he might order them to carry her back, to fight fate itself. Then his gaze dropped. That was the moment she understood she had already been abandoned. They left her there. No knife to finish the job. No prayer to guide her spirit. Just the empty mercy of distance. Hoofbeats faded. Silence returned, heavier than before. The sun climbed. Pain arrived. It arrived in waves so violent she blacked out, woke screaming, blacked out again. Her body tried to curl inward, forgetting the parts that were no longer there. The sand beneath her turned dark, then sticky. Flies landed. She no longer had the strength to swat them away. She hated them for leaving her, but worse than hate was the shame. A warrior who could not stand was no warrior at all. She had known the law of survival since childhood. Still, knowing did not make it easier to swallow. Night fell. Cold replaced heat. She hallucinated voices of dead enemies, laughter of children she would never have, the pounding of drums that were not there. More than once, she thought she saw wolves circling, their eyes glowing with patience. She almost welcomed them. But something inside her refused to die. When dawn came again, she dragged herself forward using her arms, inch by inch, leaving a trail that told a story no one was there to read. Each movement tore fresh agony through her body. She bit her tongue until it bled to keep from crying out. She did not know how long she crawled. Time broke apart into fragments. Thirst, pain, sleep, waking. At some point, she drank from a muddy puddle shared with animal tracks and insects. At another, she laughed hysterically at the sky, daring it to finish what it had started. The horse found her first. It snorted, reared back, nearly throwing its rider. A revolver cleared leather in one smooth motion. The man swore under his breath, expecting an ambush, or a corpse that might still bite. Then she moved. The cowboy froze. He had seen death in many forms. Hanging men, scalped bodies, children buried too young, but this was different. This was a woman who should not have been alive, staring at him with eyes sharp enough to cut. He lowered the gun. Jesus Christ, he muttered, not as a prayer but as a surrender. He knelt, cautious, studying the wounds. Anyone else would have finished her. It would have been Kinder. He knew that. She knew it too. She watched his face, waiting for the moment his mercy would fail. It didst. He gave her water. Real water. Cold. Clean. She drank too fast, choked, then drank again, tears mixing with dirt on her cheeks. He didst tell her to slow down. He didst tell her anything. When he lifted her, she passed out. She woke to pain and the smell of smoke. Not gun smoke. Wood smoke. She was indoors, on a rough bed, wrapped in blankets that scratched her skin. Panic surged through her until she saw him sitting nearby, sharpening a knife, eyes lifting to meet hers without surprise. "You're safe," he said. She didn't believe him. Not yet. The days that followed blurred together. Fever came hard and stayed. Infection clawed at her, trying to drag her back toward the grave she had refused. The cowboy cleaned her wounds with hands that were steady but not gentle. He swore when it hurt her. He swore louder when she didn't cry. She learned his name slowly, piece by piece, the way a wounded animal learns the scent of someone who will not kill it. He did not ask her to thank him. He did not ask her anything at all. At night, when the pain loosened its grip, she stared at the ceiling and listened to the wind outside. Somewhere far away, the world kept turning, railroads expanding, towns rising, wars shifting shape. None of it reached this small cabin on the edge of nowhere. Weeks passed before she could sit upright. Months before she could move without screaming. When she finally looked down at herself fully awake, fully aware, the reality hit harder than any wound. She had no legs. The cowboy watched her face carefully, ready for rage, for despair, for the breaking point everyone eventually reached. Instead, she closed her eyes, breathed once, and opened them again. "I am still here," she said, her voice rough but unbroken. He nodded. That was all. Trouble came the way it always did in the West, unannounced and armed. Men began asking questions. About a ghost woman. About a warrior who refused to die. About a cowboy who helped her. And the West does not forgive those who survive when they are not supposed to. As the first riders appeared on the horizon, she knew the past had finally found her. And this time, she would not be left behind. The riders did not come straight for the cabin. That would have been too honest for men like them. They circled the land first, slow and patient, like vultures deciding which piece of meat would be softest. From the doorway, the cowboy watched them through narrowed eyes, counting shadows, measuring distances, memorizing the way their horses moved. Trouble always announced itself in patterns if you knew how to look. She felt them before she saw them. There was a tightening in her chest, an old instinct waking up, sharp and unforgiving. She dragged herself closer to the window, ignoring the ache that burned through her arms and back. When she saw the dust trails on the horizon, something cold settled into her bones. "They came for me," she said quietly. The cowboy didn't answer right away. He finished loading his rifle, then checked his revolver. Only then did he look at her. "They don't know that," he said. "Not yet." That night, they didn't sleep. The fire stayed low. Every sound outside. The creak of wood, the whisper of grass, the distant howl of a coyote felt like a warning. She sharpened her knife, the same one she had used weeks before, her movements practiced, controlled. Losing her legs had not taken her hands. It had not taken her distance. At dawn, the first man rode close enough to see the cabin clearly. He dismounted slowly, hands open, pretending peace. "We're just looking," he called out. "Heard stories. Thought we'd see for ourselves." The cowboy stepped outside, rifle resting easy against his shoulder. "You've seen enough. Right on." The man smiled, but his eyes flicked toward the door, toward the shadow where she waited. He knew. They always knew. By noon, there were 6 of them. They tried again that evening. This time, they didn't bother pretending. One of them laughed, loud and ugly, and said what they all wanted. Heard the Indian woman's worth money. Dead or alive. The cowboy fired first. The shot cracked the air, clean and final. One man fell without a sound. Chaos followed. Horses screamed. Bullets tore through wood. She crawled to her position, heart pounding, breath steady. When a shadow crossed the doorway, she struck, blade flashing upward, fast and sure. The man never saw her coming. Blood soaked into the floorboards. When it was over, 3 men were dead, 2 wounded, 1 gone. The cabin stood, scarred but unbroken. The cowboy leaned against the wall, bleeding from a shallow wound in his side. She reached him, pressed her hand against the blood, and for the first time since the canyon, she felt fear for someone other than herself. "You should have left me," she said. He shook his head. "No. They buried the bodies at dawn. No markers. No prayers." The West did not remember men like that. But news traveled faster than graves. Soldiers came next. Blue coats, polished rifles, orders written by men who had never seen the land they claimed to own. They spoke of law. Of peace. Of removal. They spoke of her as if she were a thing. "She's a symbol," one officer said. "People like symbols destroyed." That night, the cowboy packed what little they had. She watched him, knowing what it meant. Running again. Always running. "Where?" she asked. He met her eyes. "Somewhere they won't look." The journey nearly killed her. Rain turned the ground to mud. Pain flared until she bit through leather to keep from screaming. More than once, he carried her on his back, staggering under her weight, refusing to put her down even when his legs shook. Along the way, they found others broken by the West. A widow with empty eyes. A boy missing 2 fingers. A former soldier who drank to forget the things he had done. None stayed long. Survival did not allow attachments. One night, near the mountains, she dreamed of her tribe. She saw them riding, strong and proud, and when she tried to call out, they rode past her as if she were smoke. She woke with tears cutting clean lines through the dirt on her face. At the mountain pass, they were caught. Soldiers blocked the narrow trail. There was nowhere to run. The officer stepped forward, confident, already tasting victory. "She's coming with us," he said. "You can walk away." The cowboy looked down at her. The question was there again. He didn't speak it, he didn't have to. She pulled herself upright, every muscle screaming. "I will not go back to a cage," she said. The first shot echoed through the pass. When it ended, the mountains were quiet again. Smoke drifted upward. Bodies lay where they fell. The officer stared at her, dying, disbelief frozen on his face. She had survived again. They did not stop until the land changed, until the air felt different, heavier, older. There, in a place no map bothered to name, they built a new life from scraps and stubbornness. She became something else. Not the warrior she had been. Not the ghost they feared. Something harder to kill. Years later, people would whisper about a woman with no legs who could still end a man with a single movement. About a cowboy who stood beside her and never once tried to lead. And far away, among her people, stories would change. Shame would turn into doubt. Doubt into regret. But she did not return. The West had taken everything from her. She took herself back. The years did not soften her. They refined her. She lived where the land itself seemed unfinished, where stones split without warning and wind howled like something alive. People stopped trying to follow her trail. Those who did were rarely found, and when they were, they carried stories that made no sense unless you had already decided the world was cruel. She became careful in a way she had never been before. Not cautious. Careful. Every movement had purpose. Every decision carried weight. Survival was no longer instinct alone, it was discipline. Sometimes she spoke to the cowboy as if he were still there. Not out loud. Just inside herself. She told him what the land was doing. What the West had become. She told him when she was tired. Those were the hardest nights. One winter, colder than the others, she nearly died again. Snow trapped her between ridges. Food ran out. Her hands cracked and bled. Fever took her for days at a time, dragging her into memories she had buried deep. In those memories, she walked. She ran across open plains, legs strong, lungs burning, laughter rising from her chest. She woke each time furious at the lie her mind offered, furious at the truth waiting when her eyes opened. But she lived. Spring came violent and fast. Rivers swelled. Game returned. So did people. They did not come hunting her. They came asking for help. A woman arrived first, dragging a wounded child behind her, eyes hollow with desperation. Bandits had taken their land. Soldiers had taken their men. There was nowhere left to run. The warrior woman listened. Then more came. A broken soldier who no longer believed in orders. A man missing an arm. A girl who had watched her family die and did not cry anymore. They did not stay together. They could not. But each left stronger than they arrived. The stories changed. She was no longer just a ghost. She was a warning. The West moved on, as it always did. Railroads cut through blood-soaked soil. Towns rose where graves lay unmarked. Laws were written by men who had never bled for them. One day, long after she had stopped counting years, she returned to the canyon. The place where everything ended. The ground had healed in its own way. Grass grew where blood once soaked. Stone stood unchanged, indifferent to memory. She dragged herself to the center of it and sat there until the sun dipped low. "I did die," she said to the empty air. The canyon did not answer. She did not need it to. That night, she built a fire and watched the stars burn cold and distant above her. She felt no rage. No need for revenge. Only the quiet certainty that she had endured something the world did not expect her to. She had been abandoned. Broken. Left to rot. And she had survived. When death finally came, it did not come violently. It came one quiet morning as she sat facing the rising sun, hands resting on the ground, breathing slow and steady. Her body failed gently, like a tired animal lying down at last. There were no witnesses. No one found her right away. But long after, travelers would swear that some places felt watched. That certain valleys rejected cruelty. That sometimes, when the wind shifted just right, it carried the sense of someone who had suffered greatly and refused to vanish quietly. They never learned her true name. They only knew that the West tried to erase her. And failed. They thought the story had ended with her death. That was the mistake everyone made when they spoke about the West. Nothing ever truly ended. It only changed shape. The first man to disturb her resting place did not know what he had found. He was a prospector, chasing rumors of silver that never paid their debts. His shovel struck something harder than stone, and when he uncovered the remains, he recoiled, confused by the iron and leather fused with bone, by the marks of a life that did not fit any law he understood. He buried her again out of fear. That night, he dreamed of a woman staring at him without anger, without mercy, only expectation. He woke screaming and left the valley before dawn, abandoning his tools, his claim, his courage. Others came later. A railroad crew tried to cut through the hills and found their equipment sabotaged again and again. Horses vanished. Supplies spoiled. Men swore they heard movement where no one stood. One was found dead at the edge of camp, eyes wide open, his rifle untouched beside him. They blamed each other. They blamed the land. They blamed ghosts. The truth was quieter. The people she had helped did not forget her. They carried her story in pieces, passed from mouth to mouth, never complete, never the same twice. To some, she was a protector. To others, a curse that punished greed. Mothers warned their sons with her name. Broken men whispered thanks to her memory when they survived another night. The West began to shape itself around an absence. Places where violence should have flourished did not. Camps failed. Raids collapsed. Something unseen resisted the old cruelty, not with law, not with armies, but with consequence. Years later, a young woman came alone into the valley. She moved carefully, respectfully, as if walking into a church without walls. She knelt where the ground felt different and placed a small bundle there, a knife worn smooth by use, a strip of leather braided by hand. "My grandmother knew you," she said softly. "You saved her." The wind stirred, gentle, almost warm. The girl did not stay long. None ever did, but when she left, the valley felt less empty than it had before. Time continued its slow work. Bones returned to earth. Iron rusted. Leather rotted. What remained could not be buried. The West kept expanding, but it never fully conquered that place. Surveyors marked it, then erased the marks. Soldiers passed near it, then chose another route. Violence lost its appetite there, as if something old still watched and measured the cost. In saloons far away, men still laughed about legends. They always did, but when laughter drifted too close to mockery, someone would fall silent, remembering a story their father had told, or a look in a dying man's eyes that had never made sense until now. She had not won the West. No one ever did. But she had scarred it deeply enough that it remembered. And in a land built on forgetting, that was the closest thing to victory there ever was.